Hello! You're watching movie Snapshot scenes, and this is the summary of Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Harry Potter was spending another dreadful summer at the Dursleys' house, trying his best to stay out of trouble. Despite being a wizard, he had to hide his magic from the Muggle family he lived with, who treated him horribly. This time, however, he had a secret weapon. He had received birthday presents and letters from his friends Ron and Hermione, as well as a birthday cake from Hagrid, making him feel connected to the magical world even in isolation. Harry was eagerly reading a book called The Monster Book of Monsters, a birthday gift from Hagrid, which turned out to be a living, biting book that had to be tied shut. As he prepared for his third year at Hogwarts, he found comfort in his gifts, his owl Hedwig, and the knowledge that he was not alone. Everything took a turn when Aunt Marge, Uncle Vernon's dreadful sister, came to visit. She was cruel and insulting, especially toward Harry and his late parents. Despite promising Uncle Vernon he wouldn't use magic if allowed to sign his permission slip for Hogsmeade visits, Harry reached his breaking point when Marge humiliated his parents. He lost control of his emotions, accidentally using magic to inflate her like a balloon. Terrified of being expelled from Hogwarts for using magic outside school, Harry packed his things and fled into the night. As he wandered the dark streets, unsure of where to go, he saw a pair of glowing eyes watching him from the shadows. Before he could react, the night bus, a magical triple-decker bus that helps stranded witches and wizards, appeared suddenly and took him aboard. The strange and chaotic ride brought Harry to the Leaky Cauldron in London. To his surprise, instead of being angry, the Minister of Magic, Cornelius Fudge, welcomed him warmly and seemed unconcerned about the incident with Aunt Marge. Harry was relieved, but confused. Fudge arranged for him to stay in Diagon Alley until the school year began, and Harry settled in, unaware that danger was lurking far closer than he imagined. During his stay at the Leaky Cauldron, Harry enjoyed a rare sense of freedom. He spent his days exploring Diagon Alley, finishing his school shopping, and enjoying the company of his snowy owl, Hedwig. The magical shops and bustling streets brought him peace after the chaos with the Dursleys. He stayed in touch with his friends Ron and Hermione through letters, and before long, they arrived with their families to prepare for the return to Hogwarts. Harry reunited with Ron and Hermione with excitement. Ron brought along his pet rat, Scabbers, who looked unwell, while Hermione had a new pet, a fluffy and temperamental orange cat named Crookshanks. Immediately, Crookshanks took a strong dislike to Scabbers, chasing him constantly, which sparked tension between Ron and Hermione. While shopping for school supplies, the trio visited the newly opened shop, Quality Quidditch Supplies, where the latest model broom, the Firebolt, was on display. Harry was in awe of its sleek design and advanced speed. Though he couldn't afford it, the sight of the Firebolt stayed with him. They also bought their textbooks, including another copy of The Monster Book of Monsters, since Harry's own had been hard to manage. While having ice cream with Ron and Hermione, Harry overheard a troubling conversation between Mr. and Mrs. Weasley. They were talking about Sirius Black, the escaped prisoner from Azkaban, who was now the most wanted man in the wizarding world. According to the reports, he had murdered 13 people with a single curse and was believed to be hunting Harry. Harry was shocked. No one had told him that the escaped convict might be after him. Later, Mr. Weasley pulled Harry aside and tried to warn him without alarming him too much. He urged Harry not to go looking for Sirius Black, even if he heard something tempting. This left Harry even more confused. Why would he ever go looking for a dangerous murderer? The summer ended with the group preparing to board the Hogwarts Express. Harry was glad to be returning to school with his friends, but the shadow of Sirius Black's escape and the mystery surrounding it lingered in the back of his mind. Harry, Ron and Hermione boarded the Hogwarts Express and settled into an empty compartment. They soon realized they weren't entirely alone. There was a man sleeping in the corner. His shabby robes and worn look suggested he was a wizard, and they later learned he was Professor Remus Lupin, the new Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher. Though he seemed exhausted, his quiet presence brought a sense of calm to the compartment. As the train journeyed north, the sky darkened and rain began to pour. The mood inside the train grew tense as rumors of Sirius Black circulated among the students. Suddenly, the train came to a halt in the middle of nowhere. The lights went out, and cold filled the air. Then, something terrifying happened. A dark, hooded figure glided into their compartment. It was a Dementor, one of the soul-sucking guards of Azkaban, sent to search the train for Sirius Black. The creature brought an overwhelming sense of despair and chill. Harry felt dizzy, heard a woman screaming in his head, and then passed out. When he woke, he was on the floor, weak and shaken. Professor, Lupin had stepped in to drive the Dementor away with a powerful charm. He gave Harry a piece of chocolate, saying it would help him recover, a tip Harry would soon come to appreciate. Harry felt embarrassed for fainting, especially since no one else had, but Lupin assured him that Dementors affect everyone differently, and he shouldn't feel ashamed. The rest of the journey passed uneasily. When they finally arrived at Hogwarts, it was still pouring rain. Hagrid, now teaching care of magical creatures, greeted the first years while the older students headed to the castle. At the start of term feast, Professor Dumbledore introduced two new staff members, Professor Lupin, as they already knew, and Hagrid, who was now officially a professor. Dumbledore also warned students that Dementors would be stationed around the school for protection, but that they were not to be provoked or approached. Harry couldn't stop thinking about the Dementor and the way it made him feel. He also couldn't shake the memory of the screaming voice he heard before fainting. Something deep inside him sensed that this year at Hogwarts was going to be very different and possibly far more dangerous than any year before. The new school year at Hogwarts began with a mix of excitement and tension. Classes resumed, and the students quickly discovered that Professor Lupin was a welcome change in the Defense Against the Dark Arts position. His kind, calm demeanor and practical lessons made him instantly popular among the students. Even the skeptical ones couldn't deny that he actually taught them how to defend themselves. In one of their first lessons, Professor Lupin introduced the class to a boggart, a shape-shifting creature that takes the form of a person's worst fear. One by one, students faced the boggart and used the ridiculous charm to transform the fear into something humorous. When it was Harry's turn, however, Lupin quickly stepped in and prevented him from confronting it. Harry was confused and slightly hurt, but Lupin later explained that he didn't want Harry to faint in front of the class, especially after what happened with the Dementor. Meanwhile, Hagrid began teaching care of magical creatures. For their first lesson, he proudly introduced a group of creatures called hippogriffs, majestic animals with the front half of an eagle and the back half of a horse. He warned the class that hippogriffs were proud and easily offended, so proper etiquette was crucial. Harry, chosen to demonstrate, carefully bowed to a hippogriff named Buckbeak. To everyone's amazement, Buckbeak accepted the bow, allowing Harry to ride him around the paddock. But the lesson quickly turned sour when Draco, Malfoy, attempting to show off, insulted Buckbeak and was promptly attacked. Though it was only a scratch, Draco exaggerated the injury, and his father, Lucius Malfoy, made a formal complaint. Hagrid was devastated and feared he'd lose his job. Harry, Ron, and Hermione did their best to comfort him. Tension continued to grow as the presence of Dementors lingered around the school. Their chilling effect could be felt even from a distance. Harry still couldn't forget the feeling of helplessness he experienced on the train, and he couldn't stop wondering about the screaming voice he had heard. As classes went on, one thing became clear. While Hogwarts still had its moments of wonder and laughter, there was now a shadow over the school, and Harry sensed that darker challenges were on the way. As the weeks passed at Hogwarts, classes became more demanding and intense. Hermione was somehow taking more subjects than physically possible, constantly appearing stressed, but refusing to explain how she was managing. Harry and Ron were baffled by her packed schedule, but didn't press her too hard, especially since she seemed increasingly defensive about it. In divination class, taught by the mysterious Professor Trelawney, students were introduced to crystal balls and tea leaf reading. Professor Trelawney, with her dramatic voice and constant predictions of doom, told Harry that she saw the Grim, a giant spectral dog said to be an omen of death, in his tea leaves. This disturbed Harry, especially since he had already seen a large black dog earlier in the summer, just before the night bus appeared. Ron, trying to lighten the mood, joked about the Grim being a sign that Harry was cursed, but Harry couldn't shake his unease. In another defense against the dark arts lesson, Professor Lupin led the class in tackling another dark creature, Red, Caps and Kappas, further proving his skill and practical teaching style. Harry admired Lupin more and more and wished he had more classes with him. Meanwhile, tensions between Ron and Hermione continued to rise because of their pets. Crookshanks kept going after Scabbers, and Ron was convinced Hermione wasn't doing enough to control her cat. The strain on their friendship was becoming more noticeable, especially to Harry, who found himself caught in the middle. Outside of class, whispers about Sirius Black persisted. Hogwarts increased security, and students weren't allowed to wander alone, especially at night. One weekend, the first Hogsmeade visit was planned, and all students needed a signed permission slip from their guardian. Harry, of course, didn't have one, since the Dursleys refused to sign it. Despite trying to convince Professor McGonagall, she stood firm. Rules were rules. When the day of the trip arrived, Harry was left behind while Ron and Hermione went to Hogsmeade. Feeling frustrated and left out, Harry wandered the castle and stumbled upon a conversation between Fudge and Professor McGonagall. Hidden under his invisibility cloak, he overheard them discussing Sirius Black and the shocking truth that Black had once been his parents' best friend and was believed to have betrayed them to Voldemort. This revelation rocked Harry to his core. Sirius Black wasn't just a murderer, he was the reason his parents were dead. After learning that Sirius Black had once been his parents' best friend, and possibly the one who betrayed them, Harry was overwhelmed with anger and confusion. The idea that someone so close to his family had caused their deaths ignited a deep desire for revenge. Though he told Ron and Hermione what he had overheard, they were both concerned about Harry's safety and tried to discourage any thoughts of confronting Sirius. As the school year continued, strange things began to unfold. The Fat Lady's portrait, which guarded the entrance to Gryffindor Tower, was found slashed and destroyed. She revealed that it had been Sirius Black who tried to enter the common room. Panic spread through the school. How had he gotten inside Hogwarts? The castle was supposed to be one of the safest places in the wizarding world. Extra security was enforced and students were closely watched. Later, during a Quidditch match against Hufflepuff, disaster struck. As Harry flew through the air chasing the snitch, he suddenly felt the same cold and despair from the train. Dementors had entered the stadium. Paralyzed by fear and haunted by the screaming voice again, Harry fell from his broomstick from high, in the air. He survived, but his beloved Nimbus 2000 was destroyed when it blew into the Whomping Willow. Professor Lupin continued to help Harry deal with the Dementors, introducing him to a powerful defensive spell called the Patronus Charm. It was extremely advanced magic, and though difficult, Harry was determined to master it so he could defend himself properly. Lupin became a mentor figure, guiding Harry with patience and wisdom. Meanwhile, Hermione's schedule remained a mystery, and the tension with Ron grew worse, especially when Scabbers went missing. Ron blamed Crookshanks, and Hermione was devastated that her friends were pulling away from her. Harry tried to stay neutral, but the rift between his best friends troubled him deeply. Despite the darkness creeping into his life, Sirius Black, the Dementors, and the growing fear of betrayal, Harry found strength in his determination to learn, his loyalty to his friends, and the unexpected support of Professor Lupin. Unanswered questions lingered, but one thing was clear. This year was unlike any other, and the truth about the past was beginning to surface, piece by piece.